I remember the day in court like it was yesterday. My heart sank as Corbin, the man I had given everything to for 7 years, stood there and mocked my sacrifices. The same man I had supported through thick and thin, working multiple jobs, running errands, and making sure his startup dream didn't die, was now belittling me in front of everyone. She never worked a real job, he said, dismissing all those sleepless nights and long hours I had spent trying to make his dream a reality. It was the ultimate betrayal, and yet, all I could do was sit there, fighting the tears that threatened to spill. I had given up so much for him. I could have had a thriving career, an exciting life, but instead, I put everything on hold. It wasn't just about finances. It was about my time, my youth, my dreams. I was barely recognized for it, but I kept going because I thought, no, I knew. We were in this together. But there I was, in that courtroom, realizing that for him, I was just a stepping stone, something disposable. I was nothing to him, and in that moment, the truth hit me hard. But here's the kicker. He never saw it coming. He thought I would stay silent, that I would just take the humiliation and fade into the background. He didn't know me, not anymore. I had something he didn't expect, something I had kept hidden for so long, and now it was time to turn the tables. As the accusations and lies poured out of his mouth, I stayed calm, my mind racing with the one thing that could ruin him. I could feel the power shifting in my hands. My silence was my answer. It wasn't that I didn't want to speak out. No, I had more than enough to say. But instead of feeding into his lies, I let the evidence speak for itself. I had spent years building this case, quietly collecting everything I could to protect myself. He thought I was naive, didn't he? He thought I'd never figure it out, that his betrayal would go unnoticed. He was wrong. I found the messages, the emails, everything. He thought I was too busy to notice, but I was watching, waiting, and when the time was right, I showed him the proof. As I sat there, his legal team scrambling to cover their tracks, I couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. For all the years I had sacrificed, for all the times I was ignored and overlooked, it was finally my time to shine. And then, I dropped the bomb. I pulled out the prenup. His face drained of color, and for the first time I saw fear in his eyes. I could see the wheels turning in his head as he realized how badly he had miscalculated. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. This was payback. Everyone in that courtroom was stunned into silence. The truth came out in a way he never could have imagined. He had no idea that his reckless behavior, his drunken signing of a legal document in Paris, was the very thing that would bring him to his knees. He thought I was nothing, that I was just a background player in his success story. But now, the tables had turned. I wasn't just his wife, I was an equal. I had a stake in this, his dream, and I wasn't going to let him take everything from me. As I sat back, watching the chaos unfold, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The years of sacrifice, the pain, the silent suffering. It all came down to this. And yet, I knew this was just the beginning. He begged me to come back, to forgive him, but there was no going back. He had broken me first, and now it was my turn to make him see that betrayal has a cost. But even as I stood there, victorious, I knew this battle wasn't over. The real fight was just beginning. It wasn't just about the money or the ownership of the company. No, it was about something deeper, something I couldn't quite put into words yet. But I was about to find out, and I was ready for whatever came next. I had always been ambitious, driven by the desire to build something for myself. I worked tirelessly as a financial analyst, moving up the ranks and gaining recognition. I was on the verge of achieving something big, something that could change my life forever. But when Corbin came into my life, everything changed. He wasn't just a partner, he was the dream I wanted to believe in. His vision for the future was contagious, and I saw in him the potential for something extraordinary. Remember the day I made the decision. It was a moment that felt right, but I couldn't have predicted how much it would cost me. I walked away from my promising career to support Corbin's startup dream. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't glamorous. I went from wearing tailored suits to serving tables, picking up shifts at restaurants, driving for a rideshare service just to make ends meet, all while he stayed up late coding away, building his business from the ground up. I didn't think twice because I believed in him. I thought we were in this together, but as the years went by, I started to notice things changing. At first, it was subtle, little comments from his family, whispers behind my back. His mother always looked down on me, as if I wasn't good enough to be a part of his world. My own family didn't understand either. They kept asking when I was going to stop wasting my life and go back to my career, but I didn't care. I was committed to him, to the idea of building something together. It wasn't about money, it was about love, about partnership, or at least that's what I told myself. I worked harder than anyone could imagine, all while sacrificing my own dreams and aspirations. I paid for his expenses, bought groceries with what little money I had left, and made sure the bills were always paid on time. It wasn't the life I'd envisioned for myself, but I kept pushing forward, believing that one day it would all pay off. That one day we would both share in the success of his business, and it would be worth every sacrifice I made. But as his startup grew, so did the distance between us. Corbin became more distant, more focused on his vision than on our relationship. He stopped appreciating the things I did for him and started taking them for granted. I wasn't just a supportive wife anymore. I was a background character in his story. He became more focused on hiring new people for the company, including Rebecca, an assistant who seemed to catch his attention in ways I couldn't. And just like that, I went from being his partner to being the one left behind. Looking back, I realize how blind I was to the signs. I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. I was so wrapped up in supporting his dream that I neglected my own needs. I neglected me. All those years of selflessness, of putting his goals ahead of mine, left me empty. And when I needed him the most, when I needed a partner, I realized I was standing alone. My value, my worth, everything that made me who I was, had been slowly stripped away. But something inside me shifted during those years. It wasn't an immediate change. It was more like a quiet revolution, a growing realization that I wasn't just someone's wife or a tool to help build their success. I was more than that. I had value. I had dreams of my own, and I had the ability to make them a reality. It wasn't too late for me. And one day, when I least expected it, I would take that realization and use it to change everything. The truth is, I gave up so much of myself for him. I sacrificed pieces of who I was, thinking it was all for the greater good, but I couldn't keep doing that. I couldn't keep living in a shadow, pretending like my own dreams didn't matter. That's when I started to see the cracks in our relationship, cracks I had ignored for so long. The pain of giving up my own identity for his dream started to burn, but I didn't know how to confront it yet. At that point, it was clear. I had been deceived. I had believed that if I just kept going, just kept giving more of myself, everything would work out. But Corbin wasn't the person I thought he was, and soon I'd realize just how deep his betrayal ran. But for now, I just had to keep going. I had to keep pretending that everything was fine, even though inside, I knew it wasn't. Looking back, I realize how crucial that honeymoon in Paris turned out to be. It wasn't the romantic getaway I had imagined. Corbin and I had just married, but I was already starting to feel uneasy about the future. There was something off about the way he treated me. He acted like I was just a part of the picture, not the heart of it. I wasn't just his wife. I was the silent partner in a deal I didn't even realize I'd signed up for. It was during that trip that I had a moment of clarity. We were at a beautiful cafe by the Seine, laughing over wine, when I made an impulsive decision. It wasn't something I had planned. I wasn't scheming, but I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that I needed some protection. I wasn't sure what the future held for us, and I didn't want to end up with nothing. I wanted to make sure that if things went south, I'd have a claim to the hard work I was putting into this relationship and his dream. So, I did something I never thought I would. I secretly drafted a prenup. It wasn't just any prenup. It acknowledged my role in the business, the sacrifices I had made, the money I had invested, the hours I had worked behind the scenes while he got all the credit. And perhaps most importantly, it gave me 49% ownership of the company. That was my stake, my recognition for the part I played in building it from the ground up. I didn't tell Corbin about the prenup. Honestly, I wasn't sure if I would even need it, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right, and I couldn't ignore that gut feeling anymore. As he signed it that night, in a haze of wine and excitement, I couldn't help but think how easy it was. He didn't read it. He was too caught up in the celebration of our marriage. He thought it was just a formality. Little did he know, I was thinking about the future, not just the moment. At the time, I didn't anticipate how crucial that piece of paper would become. I didn't know that the very thing that was supposed to protect me would one day be the key to exposing everything I had been blind to. But even then, part of me knew that if things went south, if the betrayal I felt creeping around the edges of our relationship ever became a reality, I would have something to stand on. It wasn't just about the company. It was about my own dignity, my sense of self-worth. I had been putting everything into him, into his dreams. I had given up my own for years, but I realized that I couldn't lose myself entirely. I couldn't let him take everything. I had to protect myself, even if he never saw me as someone worth protecting, and the prenup would be my silent guardian. Fast forward a few years, and I found myself in a much darker place than I could have ever imagined. As Corbin's success grew, he became more distant, more arrogant, and even cruel. He started hiring people who were better than me, people who were younger, more ambitious, and all the while, I kept quiet. I kept doing my part, believing in him, but the cracks were getting deeper. The signs of betrayal were there, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. I couldn't have known how bad it would get. but I also knew I wasn't powerless. The prenup wasn't just a piece of paper, it was my lifeline, and when the time came, I wasn't going to let him take everything from me. I knew he thought I'd just be a footnote in his story, but I wasn't going to be his afterthought. Looking back, I think about how naive I was in the beginning. I thought love would conquer all. I thought my sacrifices would be rewarded, but the truth came out in a way I never expected. That piece of paper would be the key to turning everything around. But at the time, I was just holding on, waiting for the moment I could finally stand up for myself. The moment I realized how far things had fallen was when Corbin hired Rebecca. I still remember the day she walked into the office. She was young, confident, and, let's be honest, way too attractive. I'd seen him interact with other employees before, but something about this one felt different. There was an energy about her that I couldn't shake, and the worst part, he didn't even try to hide it. He started spending more time with her, laughing a little too loudly at her jokes, giving her attention I hadn't gotten in years. It was subtle at first, but I could feel the shift. I tried to ignore it. I tried to tell myself it was just business. After all, he was running a growing company and things were busy. But deep down, I knew something was off. He wasn't just giving her more attention at work. He was pulling away from me. He started treating me like I was just another employee. In the office, not his partner, not his wife. His coldness was like a slap in the face. It was as if everything I had sacrificed for him didn't even matter anymore. But what really hurt was how he started to rewrite our history. I had been the one who supported him when nobody else believed in his idea. I had been the one who worked, the late nights, the weekends, and gave up my own career for his. Yet now, he acted like I was nothing to him. He acted like I was just a footnote in the story of his success. And Rebecca? Well, she was the star. He started leaving me out of meetings, excluding me from key decisions, and even turning down my ideas without a second thought. I felt invisible, completely discarded. And then it happened. One day, he served me divorce papers. He claimed he was tired of living in the past and that we had grown apart. But I knew better. I had seen the messages. I had found the evidence that confirmed my worst fear. There was no growing apart. He was having an affair. He had been planning this for months, maybe longer, and when I confronted him, he tried to deny it. He tried to gaslight me, saying I was overreacting, but I knew the truth. The truth came out, and it was a painful, brutal revelation. His betrayal was deeper than I ever thought possible. It wasn't just an affair. It was the way he had been, erasing me from his life, the way he had been slowly cutting me out, bit by bit, until I was no longer part of his world. I wasn't his partner anymore. I wasn't his equal. I was just someone to push aside when it became convenient. And Rebecca? She was the new shiny object, the new chapter. I was the old, outdated version of his story. The worst part? His family, especially his mother, Mia, didn't even try to hide how happy they were about it. They saw me as a stepping stone, as someone who had helped Corbin climb to the top and now had no value to them. Mia was the first one to tell me, in no uncertain terms, that I was nothing more than a temporary support system. Those words cut me to the core. She didn't see me as a person. She didn't see all that I had given, all that I had sacrificed. To her, I was just a footnote, just someone who had helped her son get ahead, and now my time had run out. But what Mia didn't know, and what Corbin didn't realize, was that I wasn't going to be their doormat anymore. I wasn't going to sit by quietly and let them treat me like this. I had spent too many years building his dream, and now it was time for me to stand up for my own. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me. I had worked too hard for too long, and now it was time for me to claim what was mine. And that's when I started to plan, slowly, quietly, strategically. I wasn't going to let Corbin's betrayal define me. I wasn't going to be the woman who just walked away, who accepted being discarded like trash. No, I was going to show him that he never saw it coming. I was going to expose him for what he really was, a man who had taken everything from me, who had thought I would stay no matter what. But before I could act, something else happened, something I didn't expect. Corbin came to me, begging for forgiveness. He begged me to come back, to fix things, to forget the past and start over. He said he was sorry, that he didn't mean to hurt me. But in that moment, I knew better. I knew he was only sorry because he had been caught. He was sorry because the life he had built was starting to crumble, and I wasn't about to be the person who helped him rebuild it. The day of the court hearing was one of the most nerve-wracking days of my life. I knew what was at stake. It wasn't just a divorce. It was my entire future. Everything I had given up for Corbin's dream. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, with everything I had worked for hanging in the balance. But But there was something else too, a quiet confidence building inside me. I wasn't going to let him walk all over me, not this time. When we walked into the courtroom, the tension was palpable. I could see Corbin's face. He looked smug, as if he already knew how this was going to play out. His lawyers had been working overtime to make sure he didn't have to give me a cent more than what he wanted. I could almost hear them whispering in his ear, telling him everything was going to be fine. But what they didn't know was that I had a trump card hidden away, and today I was going to play it. I remember sitting there, feeling like an outsider in my own life. It was surreal, watching as Corbin's lawyers painted me as the villain, calling me a gold digger, a woman who had latched onto his success and now wanted to take him for everything he was worth. They tried to make it sound like I had been nothing more than an obstacle in his path, a burden he was finally free of. And for a moment, I almost started to believe it. But then I thought about everything I had done for him. I thought about the sacrifices I had made, the way I had given up my own career and dreams just to build his. And that's when I realized I had been a partner in every sense of the word. He had been the one who had betrayed me. That's when I pulled out the prenup. I had kept it hidden, tucked away in a folder, for years. Corbin had signed it without even realizing what he was agreeing to. And now, here it was, my proof. The document that proved I wasn't just his wife. I was his equal partner in this business. It didn't matter what he had said or what his lawyers tried to spin. I had the legal right to claim what was mine, and I wasn't about to back down. The courtroom was silent as my lawyer presented the prenup. Corbin's expression shifted from smug confidence to sheer panic. His lawyers tried to fight it, claiming it wasn't valid that Corbin had been intoxicated when he signed it, but the judge wasn't buying it. He saw through their arguments and recognized the prenup for what it was, a legally binding document. The truth came out. I wasn't just entitled to a share of Corbin's wealth. I was entitled to 49% of the company we had built together, had been there every step of the way, and now the law was recognizing it. But the victory didn't feel as sweet as I thought it would. It was bittersweet, knowing how much had been lost along the way. I had fought so hard for this, but I couldn't help but feel empty. The man I had loved, the one I had given everything for, had turned into a stranger. The courtroom battle had been necessary, but it didn't bring me any closure. In the end, what mattered most wasn't the money or the company. It was reclaiming my sense of self-worth, my dignity. As the judge ruled in my favor, I saw Corbin's face fall. It was the first time I had seen him look vulnerable in all the years we had been together. He had thought I would stay, that I would take whatever scraps he threw my way, but I wasn't that woman anymore. I had finally found the strength to stand up for myself, to claim what I deserved. And Corbin, he was left with nothing but regret. I could see it in his eyes, the realization that he had lost something far more valuable than money. He had lost me. It was at that moment that I knew I had won, not just in the courtroom but in life. The victory wasn't about the prenup or the company. It was about regaining my power. It was about finally taking control of my own story. And even though I knew Corbin was going to fight me every step of the way, I didn't care. I had already won the most important battle, the battle for my own freedom. The next few weeks were a blur. My lawyer and I worked out the details of the buyout, but I wasn't in a rush. I didn't care about the timeline. What mattered now was the future I was building for myself. And that future didn't include Corbin, didn't include his lies, and definitely didn't include his betrayal. In the end, I walked away from the court with more than just money. I walked away with my dignity, my independence, and the realization that I could survive without him. But the best part? He never saw it coming. And that, in itself, was the sweetest revenge. After the court battle, something shifted inside me. It wasn't just the money, though, that helped. It wasn't just the fact that I had won, though that was empowering. What really changed was how I began to see myself. For so long, I had defined myself by what I gave to others, my husband, my family, my friends. But now, for the first time in years, I was starting to realize that I didn't need to be defined by anyone else. I could be something entirely new. I could be just me. It wasn't an easy transition. Let's face it, change never is. I had spent so much of my life being the person everyone else needed me to be that it felt like I was walking into uncharted territory. I didn't even know what it meant to live for myself. The idea of prioritizing my own happiness, of making decisions based on my own desires rather than the expectations of others, felt foreign. But it was also exhilarating. For the first time, I didn't have to answer to anyone. I was free. Didn't rush into anything, though. I needed to take the time to figure out what I really wanted, and that's where my silence became my greatest strength. I didn't jump into any new relationships or try to fill the void with distractions. Instead, I focused on rediscovering who I was outside of everything that had once consumed me. I started to focus on things I had long neglected, my passions, my health, my sense of adventure. I began to travel, something I had always dreamed of doing but had put on hold for Corbin's sake. Slowly, the pieces of my life started to fall back into place. In the meantime, Corbin, ever the opportunist, tried to reach out. He sent flowers. He sent notes. The letters were always apologetic, filled with regret. He begged me to come back, to forgive him. And for a split second, I almost felt the old pull, the desire to fix things, to return to the life I thought we could have. But then, I remembered everything. I remembered how I had been betrayed, how he had broken me first, and I realized that the man sending me those flowers was a stranger. He wasn't the person I had once loved. He was a reminder of everything I had left behind. And that was the final piece of the puzzle. I was no longer that woman. It wasn't about the revenge anymore. The truth had come out, and I had gotten what I was owed. But the real victory wasn't in the money or the legal battles. It was in my rebirth. I had taken back my life, and that was more powerful than anything Corbin or anyone else could ever take from me. The world, once so uncertain and overwhelming, now felt full of possibilities. I felt like I had just opened my eyes. For the first time in years, I didn't need Corbin. I didn't need his validation, his approval, or his love. I had something far more important, my own sense of self-worth. And that was something no one could ever take from me again. I realized that I had the power to create the life I wanted, and that was something worth fighting for. No longer was I a passive character in my own story. I was the author. The financial success that followed was just a cherry on top. With the money from the buyout, I was able to start my own financial firm. It wasn't just any firm, though. It was a place for women who had been knocked down, betrayed, or broken. I wanted to create a space where women could come together, share their stories, and learn how to reclaim their financial power. I wasn't just making money, I was changing lives, and that was more fulfilling than anything I had ever done before. The success came fast. It didn't take long for my firm to gain attention. Soon, I was being interviewed by major outlets like Forbes. My face was plastered all over social media, and people were starting to take notice. The woman who had once been nothing to Corbin, who had been betrayed and discarded, was now a symbol of strength, of independence, and of resilience. But the sweetest part of it all? I did it on my own terms. No one else had a say in how I lived my life. No one could control my destiny. The only person who could hold me back was me, and I wasn't about to do that anymore. And as for Corbin, well, I never responded to his flowers or his notes. My silence was my answer. It wasn't bitter, it wasn't angry. It was simply the end of a chapter, the closing of a door I would never open again. He had betrayed me, but in the end, it was I who got the last word. I had rewritten my story, and I was finally free.